Welcome to Psychology of Us. I'm Veronika White, psychotherapist and host. Today's conversation was recorded shortly after the Formula One weekend here in Melbourne, making it a particularly fitting opportunity to explore the psychology of elite performance, pressure, resilience, and purpose. My guest is Rory Winters, a high-performance advisor working at the intersection of identity, pressure, and elite sport, a former professional footballer and youth international in England. Rory's career has evolved from professional sport into international coaching, performance science, and now the world of elite motorsport. Today, he works with drivers competing in FIA, Formula 2, and Formula 3, supporting them to navigate the physical, mental, and emotional demands of performing at the highest levels. Having worked with more than 150 professional footballers and elite athletes, Rory has developed a unique understanding of what separates talent from long-term success. What particularly stood out to me about Rory's story is that, like many of us, life didn't unfold exactly as planned. After being drafted in professional football, the future seemed clear. Yet circumstances changed. Plans shifted, and he was forced to navigate the difficult process of rebuilding not only his career, but also his sense of identity and direction. It's a story of resilience, self-discovery, and finding purpose beyond the path you originally imagined for yourself. We'll explore what high performers understand about pressure, how purpose shapes our decisions, and what we can all learn about navigating setbacks, self-doubt, growth, and identity. Please enjoy my conversation with Rory Winters. Well, Rory, it's so nice to see you here, and you've just came out of 4 days of Grand Prix, and it was amazing. It was so many events happening there. It was a busy time for you as well.
Yeah.
Over 4 days, helping there and coaching and being amongst all these athletes, who are under pressure. How did it go for you?
Yeah, it was a brilliant weekend. The driver I'm working with, it was his first in F2, so it was a big step up from F3 last year. He performed exceptionally well, given that pressure.
Yes.
Came out with a 4th position and a 6th position in over the 2 races. So for him, it was a fantastic start and something to build on. And as part of his support team, it was great to see him, really sort of live up to his potential. So it was a good, great start.
What did it mean for you, just to be there?
It's a reflection of all the hard work that I've put in with him and he puts in with the trust, I think, between the two of us. My role's quite unique, so I'm not employed by the team, I'm employed by the driver himself. So that trust and relationship is key. And it's to create sort of a safe space for him that he knows.
Yes.
I almost see it a little bit like a big brother, not the 1984 spying on him, but more the friendly and just a trusted confidant that he can have. Obviously, I would do a lot of the physical work and the mental work with him, but it's more he knows that I've got his back and I'll be a steady sort of state for him. No matter what happens in the race, I'm there with him, supporting him.
And you've been working long together?
This is into our 2nd year together now. It feels a lot because we travel the world, right? So it's quite close. Hotels, airports, restaurants, there's a lot of time together. See him more than my wife.
Yeah, okay. That happens, when you do go, on at such a high professional level, and sometimes, people don't realize how much effort is behind the scenes. And even though it just does seem like, you travel the world, etc., but most of the time you have to be in a working mode. Yeah. I just really want to touch base, Rory, on your story. I know now you are advising young athletes, but your story was so impressive. When I read about it, I was like, I really want to talk to you about that. And just a little bit, if you could show us, some examples from your story. How did you go for your crisis and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, so I was a professional footballer. I was played from the sort of age of 8 at a professional club in England. The system's extremely sort of professional academies. And so from 8 to 16, I was at my hometown team, got released at 16. By them, which was just before my GCSE exams, which are the big exams at 16 in England. So that was a pivotal point. Mentally, it was really hard to go from thinking you've got a career and having to sit your school exams and being told you're not quite good enough. Fortunately, went on trial at a different club, got a contract there for 2 years, enjoyed that, stepped up into the sort of first team there, so I was doing really well. And then, we played Manchester United on a Tuesday night.
Amazing.
It was really good. Mark and Danny Welbeck, who's had a great career, England international Premier League player, did really well. Contract decision day was the next day. Thought I was guaranteed a professional contract at that point, and unfortunately was released. Then moved back with my mum and dad at the age of 18, sort of that week after. So your whole life flips. You've been almost hoping for stardom, which is what you think as a footballer, to nothing.
And so much effort was put to that moment just to build up that even opportunity.
Yeah. And not just from me. Again, we talked about support teams. Like my parents were amazing, fantastic. Friends at school called me the footballer. So your identity's tied with the sport, which is a dangerous position. But at 18, it's good, it's exciting, and it's how you want to be known. And unfortunately, got released, and moving back with my parents, I had to get a job because at 18, you're a young man, you have to pay your way. So ended up getting a job at McDonald's. So I went from playing Manchester United to 2 weeks later frying chicken nuggets. And that was the way it was.
It must be good chicken nuggets.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with them, but it was a fall from grace, you know. But it taught me so much. And I think I can impart that sort of, I would call it an identity crisis, that collapse of externally what everyone thinks you are. And yeah, I had people that I knew coming in, and I was pulling the baseball cap down in McDonald's, thinking, please don't see me. It was, a big thing.
But what really impresses me, like you were only 18, how did you even become aware that you did have identity crisis? How did you even start thinking like this, you know, just comparing that and then saying, okay, this should be the way out, and who am I now, and building yourself back?
Yeah, it was tough, and I think I had a few moments where I'd prefer to lock myself in my bedroom, like many teenagers do. But it was dark. Very, very fortunate that my family was super supportive. My dad was brilliant all the way through. Drove me everywhere, took me places, but was never a pushy parent in the sense that it wasn't his dream. It was he just wanted me to be happy. And then by the same token, my mum was a head teacher, so she'd always pushed education. So with that, she made sure that I was going to college. So I always had another, almost like string to my bow, I suppose, that I kept the education rolling, and I'm fortunate for that. But at the same time, the football was the dream. And yeah, it was hard. And I did feel, things had taken a dip big time at that point.
Well, yeah, you do say you did fail, you know. For me, though, you know, when you say that from 8 till 18, 10 years of that effort, you know, and the training for that moment, you know, taught you, I think, so much resilience, and I'm sure, you know, you're still training for your personal health and things like this. So there's so much you could take out of it, but I understand also what you mean by when you have all the ambitions or you bet, I guess, on one thing. And what you're saying about identity crisis. So what would be the most, or what would be the important parts for identity not to collapse should it happen?
Yeah, I think with my story, my own experiences, is having that support network around you, that almost said a container. And I think that can either be a place, people, a person, a journal, someone to share your inner thoughts and get that on paper. For me is the way I do it. And I think that's super important, because the more you internalize, for me anyway, the more I was doing this, the more withdrawn I became from the world, and the more, when you're in your own head, sometimes mine can be quite dark and quite, you know, it can be quite angry and upset about, and feel like the world's unjust, because people do get lucky breaks and you might not, and I feel everything balances out in time. But yeah, that's what I did. I had a good friendship group as well, who weren't demeaning of me or mocked me. It was all healthy. And that they really supported me. And fortunately, I ended up carrying on my education, which gave me a route back into football, and played international football after that. So the bounce back was really quick. But there was some dark moments in there,
Absolutely, yeah, I could hear that. But you're saying lots about support, you know, and it's very important. However, to me, you know, just to accept that support is the internal process. Because so many people, they can, you know, receive that support, or they do receive, but they can't receive it. So I was wondering, what would be that quality that allows people to receive that support? Because as you said, you might felt like, you know, you failed them, they put so much, you know, hope and effort in you. And although there's support, sometimes we really want to be, you know, that on that level to say, oh, you're proud of me. And how did you just want to know, like, what did you feel, or what would be that quality that allowed you to receive that support and say, okay, this is it, you know, I'm not that footballer anymore, I'm a different person. How did you go about that?
I think it was really hard to navigate, especially as an 18-year-old. It was super tough. I think the only way I knew was to keep going, because through football, as you said, from 8 to 18, you're probably in an environment where you're learning. You're on trial almost every single week without realising. So as I realised, as I got to 18, I probably had so much resilience built in that I didn't know from that journey, that it maybe became a bit more natural for me to bounce out of it. But then I know as an adult, in the last couple of years, I had another dip, and that dip was a lot harder to bounce back from and to accept support, because actually I felt like I should be doing more and I should be better for the people around me, and that wasn't quite happening. So that was tough, and I feel that to get into that acceptance, you really have to, with like deep within, find that resilience. And I think I'd probably learnt it almost like you go to the gym. I think I'd learnt it through repetition of almost being under that intense pressure. My whole childhood gave me the tools to navigate it at 18 and in my 30s, but for sure in my 30s it was a lot harder to accept support, because I felt that burden was on my shoulders and I had to be the one helping everyone else and being the man, so to speak, and it isn't always the way.
You opened up something very big and important, Rory. It's about, that pressure or responsibility. Sometimes when people put like as a label, be a man, you have to be, carry it all. You just can't experience, a whole spectrum of emotions. You have to always keep it cool. Yeah. And I was wondering, just what's your perspective on that? What's to be a man now for you?
Yeah, it's changed massively. It's changed a lot. I think to be a man now is almost to be at peace with who I am and what the future looks like. And it doesn't mean, I think as a young man, I was so ambitious, and I think a lot of people are. They want to be everything and think the world's theirs for the taking. But as I've got a bit older, I've realised, well, I can only be so many things to so many people without losing myself along the way. And I think as I started to lose myself, it took my wife and my family to pull me back in because I wanted to be so much more and felt I had to be. And I think that reverberates across masculinity in general, especially in the sporting world, where we're so governed by results that we forget the actual person behind the results. And you see it in every sport across the globe, right? There's people that are so impacted by, and you've got thousands of fans screaming in the crowd at you, and you can get lost in that. And I think that it's a dangerous position to be in as well. So yeah, for me, it was slowing down, appreciating what I had and what I've done, and being aware of that and realising, well, some doors have closed, and that's absolutely fine, but be the best you can possibly be on the doors that are ahead of you and open. Yeah.
Oh, what a wonderful advice. I actually can feel it, how I would, I'm sure myself and our audience, can feel that gratitude and appreciation of what you have, and actually to understand, this one door closes, okay, we put everything on that, but it just opens other opportunities as well. And it's not that easy to get over that bridge, of that understanding and acceptance. But by acknowledging and validating, that's okay, it's already happening. And let myself, grieve for a little bit for what I could have been, but I'm not. But look forward, to what I can be potentially, and look at you, just you are now in the position of supporting so many other people, and that's incredible. And I also want to ask you something, when I was looking particularly at your profile and what you've been doing, you often talk about purpose, and I just want to ask you to talk a bit more about what does it mean to have purpose, and why is it so important?
I think coming back to the last question, without the purpose, you can lose your way quite quick. And I think I experienced that a couple of years ago, and probably again when I was 18. So purpose for me is something almost bigger than yourself that you're aiming for. It shouldn't be tunnel vision. I think as a young man, I was tunnel vision on football, and that was my whole purpose. And that's where it comes back to identity, where it becomes meshed in. And at that point, I think it becomes dangerous. With my purpose now, it's to help other people. So therefore, I feel like all I can do is good with that. You want to be able to give back, I guess, what I was maybe missing at times as well. So to fill that void, and I think that's my purpose now. I don't want to tie it to a certain career or a certain role, because I think that becomes, you're almost too, again, tunnel visioned on that. So I don't want to be a high performance coach and go that way, and that's who I am. I'm Rory, and I'm quite good at this, but if that's taken away from me, I can transition the purpose is to help other people, whether that be in my family, my friendship group, my professional life, wherever it might, even on the street. You know, if someone needs a bit of help, you provide that help for them, and you do good for others, and hopefully that is returned back. And I feel that is the case.
That's perfect, perfectly said. It's like embracing the whole spectrum of your life, you know, different aspects, and then identifying yourself with so many things that you could be and you are. And I really want to know as well, you said you're writing a book, and because, you know, you've accumulated so much knowledge and so much experience. And before we go into your book, I was wondering if you remember some feedback from the people you helped, you know, which stayed with you, and you're like, oh, I even didn't know it's happening for them, but I'm grateful it is, and I'm part of it. Is there any feedback pops in your mind?
There's a few, really, because you do help quite a varied, in my role as well, it's sort of global. So there's boys and girls across the world that I've helped who I've done that much, I forget, because life gets busy, right? And you keep moving, especially in performance, you're on to the next one. There's one lad in particular, Jared, who's now playing football in Thailand, who I always sort of refer to him as the golden case study. So he was in the army doing national service in Singapore when I first met him. And he contacted me out of the blue, saw the work I've been doing there, came to me, approached me with a serious goal of becoming a professional footballer, but with limited exposure in Singapore anyway. And we just set a little plan up for 6 months, and it became beyond the physical side, but it was a lot of mental work. And he managed to make his debut in the international team. He's the part of the most successful Singaporean national team ever, now playing abroad in Thailand with ambitions to go to Europe. And I think with his journey, I'm not saying I'm pivotal in it, but I played a decent role in him achieving what he wanted to do. So he's the golden egg almost of that, and we still speak every day almost, and he gives me that confidence that actually when my identity suffers a little bit, which it can do in performance, I'm not perfect at all, I often refer myself back to that story and go, oh no, you do make an impact. So yeah, he's encouraging. It's good.
And again, you said something just very important now, Rory, is that it is ongoing learning and development for you as well. So we never stop really or become at one stage perfect and know it all. Yeah, and I was wondering, what is it for you? You know, what would you like? What do you feel like, you know, would be your maybe next page, and maybe for your book as well? What would you like to convey? What the message would be in that book?
Yeah, so the book, I'm trying to write sort of long form stuff to observe from almost from an insider's perspective, but just outside. So to have enough clarity to show behind the scenes. So not on the track where everyone, you know, you see that and it is glamorous, as we said, and everything's on TV, but what happens in the hours leading up to it. So in the car on the way to the track where the nerves are high, anticipation's building, like how does that feel? And what does that feel like for a driver? Because the general public don't get that perception, but actually other drivers, as we were saying about men, they don't talk. They don't talk to each other about, well, they're all living the same experience, but because they're in such competition with each other, they don't communicate that. And I think that leaves people vulnerable to dips. So I want to try and explore that from my perspective, my lens, which might be a great lens, might not be, but I want to really dig in, like, what are the quiet moments in the hotel like when you've performed poorly on the weekend, and now you've got to get a 12-hour flight back home and then train the next day. How does that feel? And my perspective as someone who's quite close to it, in close proximity, I think is I hope it's going to be valuable to anyone who read it, because we all suffer from sort of insecurities and poor performance in certain areas, but it's how we respond. And if you can expose almost what that's like at the top level, I hope that could transfer down to different walks of life. And well, if they're feeling that, I'm allowed to feel this as well, and that's normal.
I love that concept about your book, that it's not only from zero to hero story, you know, only successful stories, which is, of course, takes place. However, you know, it's so important to share that valuable information that it's often, you know, you put everything you've got, and sometimes the stars are not aligned for that very moment.
And in motorsport, that's more than anything. There's so many uncontrollables, so many nuances to it that are happening that the driver has nothing to do with. That it's tough. It's a tough industry.
So not to take it personally after all. That's all these variables. You know, you have no control over some of them, but you do have control over your internal response to something. And so, what would be, for example, I just want to know. There'll be someone under amount of pressure and they're lost, and then, as you say, they have to travel 12 hours on the plane. So that very moment when it's the hardest, what do you do?
Yeah, and I think for me, that's the precious moment where you make a decision.
Yeah.
And you either internalize it, and some people are great at that and can process it that way, or you have a safe container. I could call it a container because I think it's just good visualization,
Yes.
but a space or a person that you can turn to and just offload, because I think that offloading process is key. I know myself, when I internalize, it becomes far, far worse than it actually the reality of the situation. I can catastrophize quick, and I see that with a lot of other people in high performance, where it becomes, could I have done this? And you're talking about fractions of a second in motorsport. Could I have done this better? Could I have done this?
Yeah.
Well, it's gone.
And we're talking about fractions. Yes, it is definitely like
so that. When that's gone, we need to move forwards. We need to analyse and review and reflect, absolutely, but do that with a trusted person or space or book, whatever it might be, but get that out of your system. Because those long hours of thinking and overthinking become, for me, they become quite scary. And I can see it in some of the guys that I've worked with in the past in football. Although it's a team sport, it's very individual, and they're in competition with each other. And when they start to internalise things, it can come out in rash decisions the next day and the day after, which can impact long-term contracts. So, yeah, it's in short careers, they need to have someone to turn to.
What you mentioned, sharing, or containing your emotions, containing your grief perhaps, or any other, frustration or disappointment, in fact, and containing that. And I don't want to generalize, but there is generalizations that men are not as good at sharing, and it's hard for them to accept that, acknowledge, or definitely, sharing. And what's your take, and what would you advise, to men or young people, just who are struggling to share, and then what would it give them if they do?
Well, I think vulnerability is a superpower.
Yes.
It really is. But to be vulnerable in the first place
But
is
it's
scary.
considered to be weakness in the male world very often. How would you turn it around that, it's not a weakness, it's actually your power and strength?
I think it's people in the limelight almost reinforcing that. But that's easier said than done as well. But that vulnerability, it is a power, but at first it's super scary, which is why I think, for me, that safe container is someone you can trust, that's on your side and isn't invested in the politics behind the situation or the financial gain of the situation. And sometimes that easiest thing to do is, for me, is to write it down, and you can rip that up, throw it away once it's out of your system. But if you don't do that, that's the first step for me. And then in time, just sharing with one person, that trusted person, I think opens the floodgates to become, that wasn't actually scary. And in fact, now that person sees me for who I truly am, and that's a power. But yeah, within the male side, I think it is slowly changing.
It is definitely changing, yes, absolutely. I do see a lot of men coming forward, and it's like, okay, it's actually great, to be seen, to be heard, and it's nothing to do with weakness. They actually feel like super powerful. Like, how did I not do that before? How did I live without it? I had to carry it all inside of me. And the thing is, as you said, even if you don't have any person you can trust your journal. And instead of, just transferring that from intangible, constantly tangled in your thoughts, in those feelings, and just bring yourself even more down. When you write it down, wouldn't you agree that you get some clarity?
Oh, completely. I've done it a few times over the years, and it does feel, and it's liberating. It is a liberating process. Writing, not everyone likes writing, but just have someone, even go for a walk, no headphones in, just be with your thoughts just for a little while, but to let it out.
Now, when you are in your mentorship role, how do you deal with self-doubt yourself?
And it comes strong, believe me. Being stood on the grid at the F2 yesterday, and there's an imposter syndrome. We get it, right? We do get it, but it's that belief that I do belong here, because I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. There's a reason I'm here, and it's the path has guided me to this point, and it's where I am. But self-doubt creeps in, and again, it's coming back to myself, my identity. Like, if someone was to remove me from that F2 world tomorrow, I'd be devastated. I'd be really upset. I'd feel like, that's not fair. But actually, I'm more than that, because I can still go home and offer that sort of guidance and help to people in my family, and I'll receive it from them as well. And having that safety net of good people around me, I think protects from that and provides.
And I loved what you said earlier in the beginning of our conversation, that it's something bigger than yourself. When you think of other person in front of you and what can I do for them, I'll do my best and I put everything I've got for them. Yeah. Would that help the self-doubt?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah. There you go. Without a doubt. Yeah, it will. It has to.
Well, I'm very grateful that you came here and we had this conversation, which I believe is so important for people and for the audience, for the young people, for their parents, for anyone, in fact, who does experience identity crisis in any shape or form. You know, I know we talked about in terms of the high performance sport, but really we can apply it to any part in our life when we identify ourselves just with our relationship or just with our career or just with our education or with our culture. Any element we can put as just one point of identity, however, embracing all of it and exploring what's out there as well. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Well, be adventurous.
Yes, be adventurous.
Stuff,
And I wish you to have tomorrow a great adventure in Australia, great
exactly.
Ocean Road.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again.
Thank you very much, Veronika.
Thank you. In conversation with Rory, what stood out for me most is that success is rarely determined by talent alone. Whether in sport, business, relationships, or everyday life, our ability to navigate pressure, setbacks, and uncertainty often becomes the defining factor. I was particularly struck by the idea that identity cannot be built solely on achievement. When our sense of self depends entirely on results, confidence can disappear as quickly as success arrives. Yet, when we develop purpose, resilience, and self-awareness, we create a foundation that can withstand both victories and disappointments. For anyone watching who may be questioning their direction, rebuilding confidence, or navigating a challenging chapter, I hope today's conversation serves as a reminder that growth is rarely linear and that setbacks do not define who you are. Thank you again, Rory, for joining us, and thank you to our viewers for joining us for another episode of Psychology of Us. I'm Veronika White, psychotherapist and host, and I look forward to seeing you next time as we continue exploring the psychology behind the human experience. Take care.